Welcome, everybody. We have a live today, and thanks for joining me. This is another episode on Great Path Ministries, and today we're going to be looking at a video. I'll be reacting to a video entitled Tracy Chapman Disappeared from the Industry. Now she finally speaks out. So you're going to want to see this one with me. And without further ado, let's dive right into it. I appreciate a like, and that helps to push the video out there with the algorithm. But sit back and relax.
Terra is the IT painkiller. Remote monitoring and management, remote access, help desk ticketing.
Way that my first record, I had no idea what was.
Nobody could have predicted was Tracy Chapman, the sudden fame, the secret romance that scandalized literary circles, the legal warfare. It all made her want to disappear.
I feel like there's already so much to do. Just in going through life, and keeping things, in order and functioning.
But about a woman who had discovered the power of saying she demands.
This is true. I'm taking a break from touring.
Yeah, for how long?
Well, I don't know how long it'll be. Maybe a year.
That maybe a year would stretch into over a decade of near total silence. But what they didn't tell you is that Tracy Chapman wasn't just taking a break from touring. She was declaring war on an entire system that thought it owned her. So let's get into it. In 1988, when MTV was dominated by big hair and synthesizers, a young black woman with an acoustic guitar changed everything overnight. Tracy Chapman's debut album wasn't supposed to work. Record executives at Elektra Records were hoping to sell 200,000 copies and call it a success. Then came the Nelson Mandela 70th birthday tribute concert at Wembley Stadium. Stevie Wonder was scheduled to perform, but technical difficulties left producers scrambling. They needed someone who could go on stage immediately with minimal.
I always wondered why Tracy Chapman kind of is one of those musicians that's been in the background. I know she was really active back in the day, in the early 90s. But then after, I never actually heard about her. Maybe I was too young, but, it just crossed my mind, like, she's not really out there. Even, like, because when I was younger, I used to watch the award shows, and I never actually saw her. Maybe there was one or two, maybe where she appeared and got an award. I don't know, but let's just hear it.
Setup.
They had me waiting in the wings because the schedule wasn't entirely set. I think it was pretty much in order for all of the major acts who were scheduled to play, but they were just thinking they would slot me in wherever they needed me if they had a moment of.
What happened next would expose the first crack in Chapman's relationship with the industry machine. She wasn't supposed to be the highlight of that concert. She was filler, someone to kill time while the real stars got their act together. But when 72,000 people at Wembley Stadium and 600 million viewers worldwide saw her perform Fast Car, the music industry realized they had. The performance launched her album to multi-platinum status almost overnight. 6 nominations, 3 wins. The kind of success that typically creates lifelong industry loyalists. But Chapman's reaction revealed something different was happening.
It was exciting, of course. and scary. I had all these moments, these first moments.
Scary wasn't the word successful artists usually use to describe their breakthrough moments. Chapman was already signaling something the industry didn't want to hear. She wasn't comfortable with their game. The warning signs were there from the beginning. While other newly successful artists were doing the talk show circuit, appearing at industry events, and building relationships with executives, Chapman was retreating. She gave interviews, but they felt different, guarded, strategic. The industry had seen shy artists before. They could be managed, molded, controlled. But Chapman's shyness felt more like self-protection than social anxiety. She understood something most artists take years to learn. Once you give the machine access to your personal life, you never get it back. Her success created an immediate problem for the entertainment establishment. Fast Car wasn't just a hit song. It was a working-class anthem that spoke directly to economic inequality and broken dreams. The music industry loved making money from socially conscious music, but they preferred artists who would eventually be absorbed into the system. Chapman's early interviews revealed she had no intention of being absorbed by anything. Even when discussing her own music, she maintained boundaries. She would talk about the work, but not about herself. In an industry built on celebrity and personal access, this represented a fundamental challenge to how things operated. The commercial success of her debut album gave Chapman something most artists never achieve: leverage. She didn't need to compromise her vision or her privacy to maintain her career. The sales numbers proved that authenticity could be just as profitable as manufactured pop. But the industry was already planning its response. If they couldn't control Tracy Chapman through the usual methods, they would find other ways to bring her in line. They just needed to wait for her to need something from them. What they didn't anticipate was that Chapman had learned the most dangerous lesson of all. She could survive without their approval. By the early 1990s, Tracy Chapman had established a pattern that made record executives nervous. Success followed by disappearance. Massive tours followed by extended breaks. Critical acclaim followed by creative control that left no room for industry input. Her second album, Crossroads, proved the debut wasn't a fluke. But Chapman was already demonstrating behavior that the music industry considers pathological. She was uninterested in maximizing her commercial potential.
It just gets to be too much.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of time away from home, and I like being home. So,
in an industry where stars were expected to live for the road, for the spotlight, for the constant promotion cycle, this simple statement was revolutionary. Chapman was openly prioritizing her personal comfort over career advancement. The pattern became more pronounced with each album cycle. Chapman would disappear for years between projects, emerging only when she had something to say musically. No filler albums, no contractual obligation releases, no attempts to chase trends or recapture past success. This independence came at a cost that wouldn't be fully apparent until decades later. While Chapman was crafting timeless music on her own terms, the industry was quietly noting every instance of her non-compliance with their expectations.
It was a gift to have had the kind of success that I had with the first record, because it gave me a lot of creative freedom.
Chapman understood something that most artists miss. Early massive success creates a window of opportunity to establish boundaries. She used that window to construct an almost impenetrable wall between her art and the entertainment machine. But the machine was learning too. If Tracy Chapman couldn't be controlled through traditional industry pressure, perhaps she could be influenced through her personal relationships. The entertainment industry has always been expert at finding.
I find it interesting that Chapman had understood, or at least she was, sounds like she was an independent artist. Because what we see a lot nowadays is there's a lot of these American musicians and American artists that fail to be independent, and they rely on the machine for success. And so it seems like that was a big part. Like, she wasn't relying on this system, the music industry, for her success, and that's good to see.
Leverage points in artists' private lives. In the mid-1990s, they found their opening. Chapman had begun a romantic relationship with Alice Walker, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author of The Color Purple. Walker was 20 years older, internationally famous, and completely unafraid of public controversy.
I mean, the thing is that you can't entirely escape it. I mean, I don't have an account and I don't plan to get one, but most people that I know do.
Chapman's relationship with Walker represented everything the entertainment industry wanted to exploit but couldn't access. Here was
So that's very interesting. I never actually knew that she was in a relationship with a woman. You know, that's that's disappointing for me, because obviously, you know, this is a biblical channel after all. You know, so I don't mean to, of course, step on anybody's toes, but we know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? You know, but of course, everybody can do whatever they like until, you know, reality sets in, right? But it's interesting to know. But anyway, moving on with the video.
a high-profile romance with
What if you could taste the movies?
We turned that idea into an $11.3 million business with Wix.
royalty that could have generated massive publicity and cultural credibility. Any other artist would have used the relationship to enhance their public profile. Instead, Chapman maintained complete silence about her personal life, even as Walker began discussing their relationship in interviews years later. The contrast was stark. Walker, comfortable with public attention and political controversy, and Chapman, fiercely protective of her privacy. The relationship lasted 2 years and reportedly ended badly. Walker later claimed Chapman had financial dealings with her daughter Rebecca that soured, including a lawsuit over a failed Brooklyn cyber cafe investment. The entertainment industry watched carefully, hoping the personal drama might crack Chapman's emotional armor and make her more dependent on their support system. It had the opposite effect. The relationship's end seemed to reinforce Chapman's conviction that maintaining distance from public scrutiny was essential for her survival. She became even more reclusive, even more selective about professional opportunities. By the late 1990s, Chapman had achieved something unprecedented. She had become a major recording artist who operated completely outside the industry's influence networks. She didn't attend award shows unless she was performing. She didn't socialize with other musicians or executives. She didn't participate in the favor trading system that kept most careers alive. The industry's response was predictable. If they couldn't control Tracy Chapman, they would ensure she became irrelevant. The new millennium brought a fundamental shift in how the music industry operated. Digital distribution, streaming services, and social media marketing were reshaping how artists connected with audiences. For someone like Tracy Chapman, who had built her career on traditional album cycles and radio play, the changing landscape presented both opportunity and threat. Chapman's response was characteristically defiant. She refused to adapt to systems she didn't control.
I understand. I can see why people are participating in it, but it doesn't appeal to me.
While her contemporaries were learning to navigate Twitter, Instagram, and streaming playlists, Chapman was essentially volunteering for cultural obsolescence. She wouldn't do social media. She wouldn't chase viral moments. She wouldn't participate in the constant content creation that had become essential for maintaining relevance. The industry's punishment was swift and systematic. Radio stations that had played her music for decades gradually reduced airplay. Streaming services buried her catalog in favor of more engaged artists. Music journalism, increasingly dependent on access and exclusive content, began treating Chapman like a relic from a bygone era. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source: her own artistic integrity. Chapman had developed what the industry called a no-sampling policy. She categorically refused to allow other artists to use portions of her songs in their work. This put her on an unofficial do not sample list that made her compositions legally radioactive for hip-hop and R&B artists.
I never really concerned myself with the way that other people perceive me because there's nothing I can do about it. I've heard various things that people have said and trying to describe me as a protest singer.
Chapman's refusal to allow sampling wasn't about money or control. It was about context. She understood that once her music was chopped up and repurposed, the original meaning would be lost or distorted. For an artist whose songs addressed poverty, racism, and social justice, maintaining narrative integrity was more important than potential royalty income. This decision would eventually cost her far more than she realized. The entertainment industry's response to Chapman's sampling policy revealed their true priorities. Artists who refused to play the collaboration game weren't just losing opportunities, they were being actively excluded from cultural conversations. By 2008, when Chapman released Our Bright Future, the isolation was complete. The album received positive reviews, but minimal commercial support. Radio programmers dismissed it as not current. Streaming algorithms couldn't categorize an artist who had no social media presence and refused cross-promotional opportunities. Chapman had achieved something historically unprecedented. She had maintained complete artistic independence while simultaneously ensuring her own commercial irrelevance. The industry had found the perfect punishment for her non-compliance. They would simply pretend she no longer existed. For most artists, this kind of cultural erasure would be devastating. But Chapman had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. She owned her masters. She controlled her publishing. She had diversified her investments beyond music. The entertainment industry thought they were punishing Tracy Chapman. Instead, they had freed her from the last remaining chains that connected her to their system. What they didn't realize is that Chapman had been planning for this independence all along, and she was about to use that freedom in ways that would shock everyone. In 2017, something happened that would expose the true cost of Tracy Chapman's decades-long war with the music industry. Nicki Minaj, one of the biggest rap stars in the world, decided she wanted to sample Chapman's 1988 song, Baby Can I Hold You. The request should have been routine. Hip-hop artists sample older songs constantly, usually paying substantial fees for the privilege. But Chapman wasn't like other artists. She was on the industry's infamous Do Not Sample list, and she intended to stay there. Chapman's representatives denied the request multiple times. They made it clear that no amount of money would change her position. For most artists, that would have ended the discussion. Nicki Minaj wasn't most artists. She recorded the song anyway. The track, called Sorry, was a collaboration with Nas that directly interpolated Chapman's melody and lyrics. Minaj's team knew they couldn't release it commercially without Chapman's permission, but they had a different plan. They would leak the song to radio, generate buzz, and then pressure Chapman to approve the sample retroactively. The strategy backfired catastrophically. On August 10th, 2018, DJ Funkmaster Flex premiered Sorry on New York's Hot 97 radio station. Within hours, the song was circulating worldwide. Chapman's legal team immediately filed a copyright infringement lawsuit seeking $150,000 in damages. What happened next would redefine the relationship between established artists and the hip-hop industry. Minaj's defense revealed the entertainment industry's fundamental misunderstanding of Tracy Chapman. They argued that creating the unauthorized track constituted fair use because it was made for experimentation purposes. Industry executives were confident this argument would succeed. After all, countless artists created unauthorized demos every day. But Chapman's legal strategy exposed a deeper truth about how the music business really operated. Her lawsuit wasn't just about one song. It was about establishing whether artists had the right to control how their work was used, regardless of commercial pressure. In September 2020, U.S. District Judge Virginia A. Phillips granted summary judgment in favor of Minaj on the first count, stating that Minaj's experimentation with Chapman's song constituted fair use rather than copyright infringement. The industry celebrated what they thought was
Shout out to fair use. I don't. To be honest, this is very much a worldly concern, but well, when it comes to the content of music and the personalities involved, but I guess the biggest takeaway here is she has managed to be independent regardless, so that's rare to see, when it comes to the industry, like celebrities, artists that, became very popular, but they never actually mingled with the big, um, the big companies, right? The record labels and all that stuff. So I guess that's the biggest takeaway. Um, the title of the video is a little bit of it's not accurate, but still, there's something to learn from this. I think is that when you're doing something, you can do it independently. You don't have to, actually go out there and look for help. So if somebody to do it for you, you can do it yourself. This is the biggest lesson here. I think that goes across the borders, not just in music, just, career-wise. You can be smart about it and just do something for yourself than relying on somebody else. But I'm gonna stop the video right here. The only biggest issue I find in this case is that, of course, we have the colorful stuff behind the scenes, the barbecue stuff going on, barbecue community, whatever you want to call it, the rainbow community. That stuff, of course, I don't agree with that stuff, okay? So, but I agree with the independence and the, a staunch and strong personality to do things her own way. So yeah, so I'm gonna end it here, and thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time.